Hi everyone, and welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to like this video and share it out to all your friends. Leave me a comment, tell me what you think. If you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, but also ring that little bell, turning on all notifications. Otherwise, YouTube will probably more than likely not let you know that I have gone and posted a new episode today. If you're on Facebook, do the same thing. Like the video, turn on all notifications on the page right after you like it. I would really appreciate it. It really helps me. Today I'm diving into a fan base and a fandom that I never have before. This will be a very interesting conversation because I have not watched a single episode of the show. I've never watched any of the TV films. I've never watched any of the specials or the miniseries, but there have been some developments in this series that I recognize in franchises that I know and love. So I just wanted to touch on them a little bit today and maybe get your reaction. You'll have to let me know what you think about what I say in the comments below. What is this franchise? Oh, it's Doctor Who. With that in mind, sit back, relax, and welcome to Studio Jake. Now, when it comes to Doctor Who, I am a complete normie. I only know what I have seen. I've not watched a whole episode of the show, not of the original show that was on with the first Doctor and so on. I've never watched the reboot series. I guess that started in 2005. And I do know some of the actors like David Tennant and Matt Smith from other franchises and films and series, but I've never watched Doctor Who. In fact, when it was announced that Jodie Whittaker would be coming on to be a part of the Doctor Who series, I had no reaction to it. I don't even know who Jodie Whittaker is. I know that she is a popular British actress who has starred in a couple of BBC series before, but I know nothing of her. So just keep in mind, if I say something that's wrong or off, I don't know. Now, the basic premise of the show, my understanding is there is a guy, usually, now it's a woman, named Doctor Who, and the reason he's called Doctor Who is because his real name can't be uttered. So folks in the show refer to him as Doctor Who or just the Doctor. And he lives in this basically a time machine, and it looks like an old British payphone. It's called TARDIS. And he travels from different time periods to battle villains. Now, supposedly the Time Lords are, they have like all these abilities, but they choose not to help the universe. And my understanding is the Doctor, he chose to step in and interfere, but not necessarily because of a moral stance, but more for self-preservation, but then he kind of grew to love humanity. I could be wrong about that. You can let me know in the comments, but that's my basic understanding of the show. And even though each version of the Doctor has has its own personality, they still adopt certain mannerisms and personality traits of the Doctor, going all the way back from the first Doctor all the way to the one prior to Jodie Whittaker. And like I said, I'm a complete normie. So if I'm wrong about any of this, I'm doing this all based on stuff I have read. Please let me know, because I don't want to get a fandom incorrect on this note. So basically, as I said, um, it was understanding prior to the 12th Doctor that every Time Lord is only allowed 13 reincarnations, but the 12th Doctor actually lost his hand in battle, and so he used his regeneration ability to heal his hand instead of getting a new body. So he had used up all of his regenerations, and this is when like the body kind of becomes worn out, so they have to regenerate, and that's how you have different actors, so opposed to James Bond, the original James Bond story arc where different actors played him because you know, the like Sean Connery, he was kind of getting too old. He was kind of tired of playing James Bond, and so they got George Lazenby, and then they brought Sean Connery back. But then they were like, oh, we need someone else because Connery is still getting kind of old. So they brought back Roger Moore, and which is kind of ironic because Sean Connery came back another time for a non-canon James Bond film, which is hilarious. But anyway, um, basically, it's unlike that James Bond. It's the character recognizes that they have changes, and in fact, when the character goes back in time and runs into another doctor, there is they interact, and they're like, "Oh wow, you look different," and whatnot. Now there's a another mysterious doctor called the War Doctor, played by legendary British actor John Hurt, and he had a huge appearance in a movie basically, and then he's made like subsequent appearances, but he never actually had a show, is my understanding. And I've actually talked to some fans of the show, and he is their favorite Doctor Who, which I think is kind of funny. But I can't really say anything because Kevin Conroy is my favorite Batman, and we all know he's only played Bruce Wayne live action once on the CW, and it was terrible. So with that in mind, so I'm just telling you all this to kind of set up the premise of Doctor Who. Like I said, I am a complete normie when it comes to Doctor Who. I'm going to probably repeat this line throughout, so if I get something wrong, don't hold it against me. But my understanding is the BBC wanted to do basically what Star Wars and Marvel Comics and a bunch of other franchises decided to do, and they decided to go woke. So they got or I should say, they got an actress named Jodie Whittaker to play the 13th incarnation of the Doctor. Like I said before, he only had 13 originally, and he used up all 13, but the Time Lords granted him a new cycle because they wanted to keep the show going. And so in this next cycle, the first of his first cycle, he becomes a woman. And I guess a lot of fans, BBC, of course, and nerd outlets are trying to say that the reason people are complaining is because they're sexist, misogynist bigots who don't like the idea of a woman being the Doctor, and because because there has been such backlash to the show. In fact, series 12 or season 12 of Doctor Who, according to Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 91%, so it's certain that it goes from 0 to 100 on Rotten Tomatoes percentage-wise. And if it's 0, it's awful, 100 is good. So it's got a good rating on the tomato meter at 91%. However, the audience score is 16%. That is low. That's awful. It's based on over 3,000 reviews, is my understanding. So according to Bounding into Comics, I guess they ran the average. The average vote for it is 1.37 in favor. So like I said, this is 1% out of 100. And so it's gotten incredibly low reaction from the fan, and it's faced major backlash. There was rumors for a while that BBC was actually going to have a crossover with Matt Smith's Doctor, where she was going to call him a sexist herself. The Doctor was going to go back and meet a male version of herself and say he's a sexist misogynist. Check your privilege, Mr. Doctor. So, not even being a fan, that sounds even, or saying, I'm sorry, even not being a fan of the show, that sounds bloody awful, as they say in England. But basically, the backlash has gotten so harsh that the BBC is actually issuing statements about it. Now, this has happened before because the show has run for over 50 years. It did have a break where they just kind of did movies, and it also had and it also went on hiatus for a while, but there were books that were coming out that kind of filled the gap of what was going on in between the various doctors during the hiatus. And I even think the War Doctor fits in that hiatus sphere at some point. So, according to Bounding into Comics, they have compiled a list of the negative reactions to Series 12. I wanted to read some of these because this is just incredible, some of these statements. HH writes, "The cringe is real. You might, or excuse me, the cringe is real. You think it might not be as bad as you think, but it is. Good God, why?" Blake C writes, "Completely retcons all 50 years of story world building. Wow. Jodie Whittaker is a terrible doctor. She is bland, flat, and does not know how to act like the doctor. She hasn't even really watched any of the previous seasons to get an idea on how the Doctor acts. The Doctor has had clear mannerisms throughout all his incarnations, and these are basically completely ignored throughout Whittaker's time as the Doctor." Timothy W. writes, "Not real Doctor Who. What is this rubbish?" James R. writes, "Time for a new Doctor and better writing." Antonio Mariano in writes, "One of the main problems I have with the Timeless Children." Okay, so Timeless Children, we're going to talk about that more. Just so you know, it's the season finale of season 12. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. One of the main problems I have with the Timeless Children arc is because it changes the Doctor in a negative way for me. The Doctor was different because of the choices he/she made. The Doctor was one of those who ran by staring at the void, quote, quote. The Doctor was never part of the, quote, quote, elite. She lived in a barn. The Doctor was the Time Lord who chose to interfere to break the rules to help others in need, not because the she is special, genetically special, being one to form her entire race, making every single one of the Gallifreyans, that's the planet the Doctor is from, is Gallifrey, a little bit of the Doctor. What always interested me in the show was that every Gallifreyan could do what the Doctor chose to do, but didn't. The Doctor being the only one to step up to solve the problems of the universe. This is me criticizing the whole order, quote, quote, idea, to just be kind. And as always, sorry for my bad English. It's okay, Antonio, we will forgive you. Bruce L. writes, "OMG, this season was worse than season 11, and I didn't think that possible. The writing is horrible, and the way the writers destroyed the last 55 years of Doctor Who history is disgusting. I, for one, will no longer watch this trash heap of crap." Katrina K. writes, "Crap, crap." Okay, oh, here's a woman writer. "Crap, crap, 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 crap. Us, the oldies, we made the show, we can break it. Wait, you've already done that without any help from us." Without was misspelled, by the way. John T. writes, "Are you kidding with this finale? I thought the episodes leading to this were bad, but this is absolute travesty. They ruined the entire history of the franchise." Peter L. writes, "Chibnall, clearly, he's one of the producers, clearly has not watched the Doctor Who has Chinball clearly has not watched Doctor Who and decided to change everything science-y about the show while seemingly trying to intentionally destroy it for us fans who have watched it for many years." Space B writes, "Oh God, 50 years of Who ruined. This is so beyond horrible that I refuse to call it canon." And then they have a quote from a YouTuber named Gary Belcher, who runs the YouTube channel Nerdrotic. He described the past two seasons, the ones with Jodie Whittaker, as, "I believe that the last two seasons of Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who has been a giant middle finger to the fandom, and he wrote that middle finger into The Timeless Child. He mocks and patronizes the fans." So once again, thanks to Bounding into Comics for compiling this list. So my understanding is, like, remember how I mentioned that Doctor Who was part of an alien race called the Time Lords, and he decided to intervene, has gone through all these incarnations. So apparently, they rewrote that in this series, the season finale, where in fact Doctor Who is the first Time Lord. He was actually found by another race of aliens as a baby in a spaceship abandoned, and just basically stole those powers and abilities sort of accidentally. And this has outraged fans. It's probably it seems to me that the fans of the show have every right to be outraged. I mean, this was like when I found out that Fifth Generation was going to replace Bruce Wayne and all of his other successors as Batman with Lucius Fox's son, Luke Fox, who did work for Batman as Batwing, one of the members of Batman Inc. And this is so disappointing and shocking. And like I said, I'm a normie, but even judging from just what I'm reading, the fans have every right to be outraged by this. This is a travesty and disrespectful to a character that is obviously very well beloved. And now maybe some of the Doctor Who fans who are looking over in America and going, what's the big deal about some of the changes Marvel is making to characters in the comic books? It's just comic books. This is how we feel. This is how we feel when we see that Jane Foster is now Thor, which is a masculine name, by the way. This is how we feel when Siri Williams, who is one of the most poorly conceived characters, at least as far as origin story, Riri Williams replaces Tony Stark as Iron Man. Excuse me, Iron Heart, but they still called the comic Iron Man, which was stupid. And why, instead of making Captain Marvel this Wonder Woman-like character who was a patriot and an Air Force pilot and a really tough girl, into this woke scold who's overpowered. This is why fans get angry. In fact, this is why, now I know that I was in the down low of this, but this is why I didn't like Logan, because it reduced this really cool, epic character into a spineless, dying drunk who has daddy issues. And basically, Logan turned, and of course I'm talking about the character of Wolverine, Logan turned the character of Wolverine into a bad remake of Pell Rider. And that's one of the reasons that I didn't like the show, or excuse me, didn't like the movie, and I'm sure that's other reasons why Doctor Who fans are reacting so poorly to Jodie Whittaker's version of the Doctor. They just don't get it. Now, all they have to do is redo the course, make it where I believe a character called the Master was doing this to Doctor Who. All they have to do for the upcoming season is do a little bit of retconning. I remember in Batman the Animated Series, they purposely stated that Joker's real name was Jack Napier as a nod to the Tim Burton film. However, when it came to light later, that and they kind of wanted to not go with that origin so much, they basically said that in a TV broadcast that Bruce Wayne was watching about the Joker, that um, that it was a nickname and his real name as the Joker was unknown. That there are easy ways they can fix this. It was similar to how they made Discovery. People didn't really like the captain or the twist of the captain's character, who was played by oh, the name escapes me, but anyway, so they replaced him with Anson Mount, who of course was Captain Christopher Pike. He received command of Discovery after the Enterprise was damaged and under repair. But I think that Doctor Who people should stop, I'm sorry, the Doctor Who people, the fans, they should not stop. They should keep clamoring. Now, the BBC actually defended it, as did the producer of the show, Matt Strevens, I believe his name is. But Matt Strevens said, I think it sort of cleaves to the basic principle we have and I've had on the show, but I think we all have, is you have a vision for what you want to do while you're on the show, whether you're the doctor, whether you're a producer, whether you're a writer, and you see that vision out. He added, and the conversation around what fans want and what audience wants, all that kind of stuff, you just have to trust yourself as a program. Blah. He continued, you can't really be buffeted by those winds because people will change their minds. Okay, sure, that's true. Yes, fans will change their minds, but you have to be the one to change it. This is the same problem that Kathleen Kennedy has, as Disney's lackey to and running Star Wars. They've done such a poor job of managing that franchise, is they want to put their own sort of spin on it, and it's awful. You can't just say, okay, we're going to rewrite history. You have to pay homage to that canon. This is what hacks are made of. People say, Hacks are people who take what stuff that has already been done, present it as their own, and then brag about how visionary they are, which is what Rian Johnson does. And it seems to me even Knives Out, all he did was steal what great writers like Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie did and then put his own spin on it. And there's nothing wrong with doing a genre like a murder mystery in a mansion or another connection to Star Wars. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't treat it like a genre. You have to, when you have a franchise like this, you can't treat Doctor Who as its own genre. You have to treat Doctor Who as a setting with its rules and boundaries and limitations. You have to, and it's the same with Star Wars, the same with Marvel Comics, the same with DC Comics. And those things have to be adjusted over time because you run out of ideas. Sure, but to just slap in the face of the fans is just embarrassing, and it really shows a crew that is off course. And this is the BBC's response to the backlash. Doctor Who is a beloved, long-running series, and we understand that some people will feel attached to a particular idea they have of the Doctor, or that they enjoy certain aspects of the program more than others. Opinions are strong, and this is indicative of the imaginative hold that Doctor Who has, that so many people engage with it on so many levels. And I believe, and they said, we wholeheartedly support the creative freedom of the writers, and we feel that creating an origin story is a staple of science fiction writing. What was written does not alter the flow stories from William Hartnell's brilliant Doctor onwards. It adds new layers and possibilities to this ongoing saga. That's my reaction to that. We have also received many positive reactions to the episode's cliffhanger misspelled with a dash for some reason. There's still lots of questions to be answered, and we hope that you will come back to join us and see what happens. But we appreciate it that it's impossible to please all of our viewers all of the time, and your feedback has been raised with the programmer's executive producer. Okay, so again, hack statement from hack writers, hack producers, and the party line basically is what this is. And this is the same reaction that Rian Johnson gives when he and Zack Snyder gives when they talk about the franchises they were given. Are you living in a fantasy world, you effing moron? That is. Yes, we are living in a fantasy world. It is a fantasy world that has its own rules, and you have to follow these rules. And like I said, they can be bent, they can even be twisted sometimes. Once Upon a Time did this, where they established rules of magic, right? So you can't force people to fall in love. You can't. You basically can't become invincible, and you can't force someone to love you. You can't bring back someone from the dead. And in the spin-off show Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, this what became part of the premise. Is Jafar, who is a villain in Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, he wants to rewrite the laws of magic, and they give him an ability to do this. Via he has to capture 3 genie lamps, but they all have to be connected somehow. It can't just be random genie lamps, and so that's what the premise of that show is, and it works for that show, and it gave the writers a way to work around those rules. Star Trek is notorious for this, for establishing the rule, say about time travel, but then to change course. And some of their plot devices are campy and cheesy, 100%. But I think that if if they continue to move forward with Doctor Who, where they're just going to say, hey, we're just going to let the writers do whatever they want to do, I think that's really, really sad. They shouldn't trust the producers, because this is what, like I said, this is what is happening at Marvel and DC, and it's ruining the franchises. Generation 5 is going to be awful, and what they've done to Wally West as a character is awful. I think they should see more of this through and think more of this through. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. If you're a Doctor Who fan, tell me exactly what you think. Am I wrong? Did I get some of my facts wrong when I was reading my Wikipedia level knowledge? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, be sure to follow me on Facebook, author Jacob Berry. YouTube is StudioJake. You can find me on Instagram, Parler, and Twitter at Real Jacob Airy. You can also find my blog where I talk more about pop culture stuff, such as movie reviews. I talk about novels that I'm reading. I talk about television shows and anime, sometimes video games. And you just got to head over to jacobairy.blog to find all of that. Also pick up a copy of my novel on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com. You can download it off Apple Books because they don't call it iTunes anymore. But it's The Seven Royals, All Good Things. It's a fantasy story that is incredible, if I do say so myself. So definitely get yourself a copy, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.